Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. In this one I just want to do some final speculation ahead of the big New York Comic Con Avatar Legacy publishing panel, which is coming up on Friday. So we're only a few days away from this. It is this week. And this is basically probably going to be our last kind of expected big news of the year. Now, keep in mind, this is a publishing panel. We are not at all expecting any like Avatar Studios, like animation, like related stuff here. This is a publishing panel and has been for the last bunch of years. So what's changed between when I did my last my first speculation video on this panel is that I think when I first did it, we only had 4 out of 6 of the panelists here confirmed. So since then, Joan Hilty and Rachel Silverstein have been added to the panel roster for the panel, which I think does slightly change expectations and thoughts about what we expect as news. So let's go over this. I think it should be also noted as well that the panel is 6:45 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. So it's another late publishing panel. And that is a little bit awkward for people kind of at the convention, that it's like right towards the end of the pretty long convention day. So I'm a little worried that that means there might not be a lot of coverage of this panel, but hopefully we get the details kind of coming out of this. So the panel description again is Abrams Books, Dark Horse Comics, Nickelodeon, Webtoon, and Magpie Games are here for the panel. The rest of it is just like copy paste from the last like 8 years of like Avatar publishing panels. They don't say anything of note about it other than that. It's the fact that we have effectively the 4 main publishers for Avatar. I suppose it's really the 3 main publishers for Avatar: Abrams, Dark Horse, and Magpie. Webtoons just, you know, I suppose they alter the comics to be in the kind of single scroll format, so I guess they're kind of considered a publisher. But in my mind, until they actually start putting out like original content, like I don't quite include them in that group. And then Nickelodeon obviously is meant to represent a lot of the other books that Avatar puts out. So your I Am Aang, I Am Toph style books, as well as stuff like, you know, the How to Draw book that like recently got announced. So like there's a few things that this could mean, but I wouldn't be expecting too much from Nickelodeon, at least right now. This is something where maybe in the future, when Avatar Studios stuff is announced and the publishing panels are probably going to talk more about tie-in stuff for that, which I do think it's a bit early for this panel. I'm expecting Nickelodeon books will have stuff like junior novelizations for the animated shows, the movies, and that sort of stuff. We'll see a lot more just standard tie-in merchandise that you would expect from a franchise that we maybe haven't got as much of over the last few years. So, yeah, panelists, again, to quickly recap this. Cara O'Neill from Dark Horse Publishing is our usual moderator at these panels. She does most of the talking overall. Ethan LeBlanc, I believe, is the Webtoons representative on the panel. James Mendez-Hodez is going to be for Magpie for the Avatar Legends role-playing game. Joan Hilty, who, like I said, was newly added to the panel compared to the last update, executive editor of Avatar Studios. So one of the big people on the publishing side of things involved with Avatar Studios, which obviously adds a certain level of like, oh wow, we've got someone from the studios here. It's not just the publishers working with the studio, it's like one of the main editors here involved in like all of the publishing stuff is here. That's like, okay, she's been on these panels before, but the timing of this one is kind of like, maybe there is a chance for some bigger stuff in terms of what's she going to talk about on the panel. Just help the other people talk about stuff, or again, is this actually a panel where we're maybe expecting more than the standard 1, maybe 2 announcements? Who knows? I'll do Randy Rabai before Rachel Silverstein, because in a way, what's he going to talk about? Reckoning of Roku's been out for a couple of months. They don't do spoiler discussions about books. They don't talk about the details. So he's mainly here because Awakening of Roku is coming out next year. Now, as far as we're aware, it's been delayed to like October next year. Will they mention that? Who knows? In terms of news, maybe the description for the book will finally come out and we'll have a sense for what it's about. There's maybe a slight chance for the cover, but it might be a little bit too early, especially if it has been delayed into October. The book means it's a full year away. So it makes sense for him to be here on the panel because that is the most recent thing and Abrams is one of the main publishers, but I'm not sure how much we're maybe expecting from Awakening of Roku overall. And then Rachel Silverstein is the very interesting one where either she's someone who was attending New York Comic Con who has previously worked on Avatar, who they just wanted on the panel to have a panel of 6, or she is here because she is involved in a book that is going to be announced. Now, the reason it's particularly odd here is because she's only done for Avatar, so for Korra, a 4-page story in Patterns in Time. Skyscrapers, the Young Asami and Yasuko comic from that. She wrote that book. But that's all it is. It's 4 pages from a couple of years ago. She was on one of the panels, I think, a few years ago as well. But it's been a while since then, and I don't think there's any way they've brought her onto this panel to talk about that again. So, I don't believe there's been any announcement. I don't think we know that Rachel Silverstein is involved officially in any other publishing project. So, it must be some sort of an announcement here, if that is the case. Again, it is speculation, but there is definitely the, why are you here? A lot of the other people make sense because they're either, a writer at their company or someone high up at their company, and it makes sense for them to be there because of a specific book or to just represent the publisher overall. But Rachel Silverstein, we don't really know what the kind of connection is up to now. So that's where a lot of the speculation I think in this video is probably going to come from, is that ultimately I'm not expecting too much from Abrams' books. Maybe a slight Awakening of Roku update. There's always a chance for like another novel series to be announced, but I think it might be a little bit too early for that. I think it would be cool if they did, but maybe stretching it a little bit too far. The only reason I would maybe have a slight bit more hope is just that, like, say, Joan Hilty from Avatar Studios being there might be there to give us a teaser as to the future of publishing when Avatar Studios properly gets going, and there might be a sign of things there. Like I said, not expecting too much on the Nickelodeon side of things. I Am Toph preview pages could be something we hear coming out of this. There's also a box set, I believe, expected for those books as well. They might have those to show off. There was a recently put up listing for a How to Draw book. They might be able to show that one off. But otherwise, anything that kind of gets released on this side of things is either probably going to be a book that maybe is not going to be the most interesting thing overall, or probably more focus on Nickelodeon publishing in the future when the tie-in kind of stuff can properly get going, I guess. Webtoon is interesting because if you assume that, okay, everyone's here for news, what we expect based on what they said at San Diego Comic-Con is that at some point Webtoon probably are going to announce that they have some sort of exclusive deal with Dark Horse to actually release some original content through Webtoons. Rather than what they've been doing up to now, which is just releasing the comics that have already been out for many, many years, slowly over the weeks. It'd be much more interesting if they were able to put out new content in that format, so we get regular comic releases. And who knows, maybe that's where Rachel Silverstein could come into play. Maybe Rachel Silverstein is writing the Webtoons original stuff, but we don't know for sure that that's what Webtoons are here to talk about. They could just be here to talk about like we just started the Rift, and in a couple of months' time we'll be moving on to Smoke and Shadow, and then the North and South, and then Imbalance, and here's our plans for the Korra comics that are already out, and here's our plans for how we're going to do the short story content. And it could be news that just doesn't relate to new content at all, but they have also, from the last panel, teased the idea that it seems to be on the table that they can do new content. And at least to me, I feel like adding them as a named publisher on the list for the panel feels weird if there isn't the plan for them to put out original content at some point in the future. regardless of how popular it is and how much of people are reading the comic through webtoons, I just think because they're not putting out actual new content, it just feels a bit weird to me. So there's that. Magpie similarly are in a weird spot where they could very easily just basically not say anything, because we've absolutely had panels over the last couple of years since the RPG has come out where Magpie have just been like, hey, did they say anything? And most people are like, they spoke about some stuff, but they didn't really announce anything. But then we have had ones where like they previewed the Republic City book and there was some nice art that they showed off. Where they are currently is that they're in a weird spot where the Iroh book is on the verge of shipping out. I'm not sure I've actually heard anyone receive an actual shipping notification, but it's meant to be shipping out. Public orders are now open. Anyone who pre-orders the book basically now has access to the PDF. So the book is released effectively. They're still in the process of doing the physical copy kind of release and like shipping it out and stuff like that. But in essence, that book is out now. It's not the new thing necessarily anymore. So they have to talk about what's next. And based on what we know, it should be the Spirit World book that was announced right at the early stages of the project. That we knew going in there was going to be a core book, a Republic City book, and a Spirit World book. The Iroh book was never a thing. They've added that in. It feels like we need to get back around to the Spirit World book, and hopefully we hear about that here. There is also the Roku Voyage of the Unity Kickstarter that Magpie are working with Beetle and Grimm on. That's going to be a Kickstarter. They might talk about that as well, but is that something for the panel, or will Beetle and Grimm just announce that at some point on Twitter or something like that? It's very, very unclear. What it means is that the only publisher that we're really expecting, I would say, like actual news from, that's like feels like for sure they have to say something, and it could be more than that, is Dark Horse. Now, the reason for this is obviously that, one, they've released all of their Avatar comics that we know about. The Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer has been out for a while now. That is Avatar one-shot number 5. We are absolutely going into this panel expecting them to announce Avatar one-shot number 6. This will be the completion of the second trilogy of one-shots, which is significant because we now know, of course, that they are collecting each group of 3 one-shots into a hardcover book. So there is going to be a 6th one. It would be weird if there wasn't. It's just, what character is it going to be? I'm assuming it will still be the Faith Aaron Hicks and Peter Wortman creative team, but this is where the Rachel Silverstein kind of mystery kind of comes back into play, of like almost any book that is new could have her attached potentially as the writer. They could be switching things around based on what's actually happening here. But that's probably the one thing in terms of a major piece of news that we would be expecting is the next Avatar one-shot. And I mean full announcement, like I expect to see the cover coming out of this so we know what characters it is. We have the name for it. Will it get a full-on listing just yet? Maybe, it's hard to say. It's one to keep an eye out for, though, in terms of, yeah, if they don't announce that, I think it's a weird situation, because keep in mind, Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer was already, like, delayed, and the reason it only came out when it did was because it just received a bunch of, like, basically logistics delays. So the book was done for a really long time. So they should be well on schedule, because if it is the same creative team, they do effective work. So that book pretty much should be ready to go probably for like May, June, July next year, unless something crazy has happened. So that feels like one of the more consistent things kind of going on here on this side of things. So that is the main announcement we would be looking for, that we'd be shocked if they didn't have anything to say for themselves. But I would also expect another announcement from Dark Horse, just because, again, I think there's only a slight chance that they're maybe switching out Faith Aaron Hicks for Rachel Silverstein. I think her being on the panel probably highlights that she is there working on some sort of another comic. Now, again, it could be the Webtoons connection, but who knows? What is the next Korra comic? Because, okay, we know it's the Mako comic in February, but they've been previewing this. We've heard about this. We've been talking about this at the last like 3 or 4 of these big conventions. Like, they'll mention it, I assume, but there's nothing else to say until the book now releases, basically, and it's February. And with the timing of when the next big convention is, SDCC next year, it leaves a pretty long gap where it feels like you're going to have to announce the next one sooner rather than later. And again, because of other weird delays, surely you are ready to say what's next. At the very least, I hope they verbally confirm who the next character of focus is going to be for the next one-shot. And this is maybe where some speculation comes into play of Rachel Silverstein did the Young Asami comic, and I think at the last panel that she was on, she talked about how like she had a greater idea for the story but had to settle for the more basic 4-page story. Maybe they're committing to like, okay, you write Asami really well, so hey, you do the Asami one-shot. But because I don't think we know for sure Kiku Hughes is the writer for all of the Korra one-shots or whatever. If they maybe do confirm that, then that would obviously suggest that, well, Rachel Silverstein probably has to be involved in some other book that we don't know about. Again, maybe webtoons, maybe something else, because Dark Horse absolutely do have the capacity to just announce another Avatar short story collection or a Korra short story collection, because there are free comic book day books that do need to get reprinted into an actual mainline release at some point, and we could probably do with some short stories as well. Not to mention, you know, we're always looking for when our proper trilogies may be going to return. What are Dark Horse's plans for once Avatar Studios gets going? Is it just more of the same, or can we now tell stories in the adult Avatar, like adult Aang kind of timeline? Can we do Kyoshi comics, Yang Chen comics, Roku comics? Can we do more? Like there's so much that Dark Horse could be doing that we haven't had like announcements for, that we just need something for. So all of that stuff is absolutely possible. Not to mention, Beasts of the Four Nations is back on the table. Because of the news we got from a few weeks ago that some like work is being done on that book, it's a bit vague the way it came out, but it seems like pretty clear cut that, okay, work is being done. The book is not cancelled as such. It's just we don't know when work restarted again on the book, if it ever really finished, if it's just taking a very long time. Is this the panel for that book to be announced? Because we've been waiting on it. The collection that it's meant to be a part of has been complete, like excluding this one final book, Beasts of the Four Nations, for a long time now. You got to announce that sooner rather than later, and so I really do think that probably is the book that's kind of meant to almost be the transition between Dark Horse pre and post, like Avatar Studios to a certain degree. So that would be a very cool announcement. Like, yeah, let's just say that we come out of this and we get our Avatar one-shot number 6 and Beasts of the Four Nations. I think most of us would be pretty happy with that, especially if there's anything else that the other publishers have to say that's of note. Beasts of the Four Nations has been, I think, much anticipated, especially because we don't really know too much about it. We've not seen like a preview page, so we don't really know what the layout of it is like in terms of how much text is there in the book. Is it mostly an art book? How much information on animals actually is there? That's the sort of stuff that we're waiting to see. But again, it is the case that just from a speculation point of view, I think it is all on Dark Horse, because they're the ones who have been, I think, exceptionally slow, not many releases for the last while, and they need to kind of get up and running again. So they're my thoughts. My final thoughts is just that, effectively, I'm going into this panel expecting it to be a relatively normal publishing panel, but I would say I have slightly higher expectations than usual, just because I think of a lot of the timing of when we have and haven't got announcements. It feels like this is a panel where we do need some of these publishers to announce some stuff. So usually I think we go in expecting for sure one new book to be announced, but I would say probably we come into this one expecting at least two books to be announced, if not 2 plus some other stuff. And it's all on stuff like, say, is Joan Hilty here to really make this feel more important because she's from Avatar Studios? Or is it just, hey, publishing panel, you're involved in publishing, you won't have too much to say, but you're here, so that's fine. The Rachel Silverstein kind of mystery is continues to be quite interesting just because, hey, why are you here if you're not on a new book? And then what new book are you on? Because they tend to keep pretty set creative teams. So are you breaking up some of the creative teams, or is it a new book? That's super interesting, I think. Not to mention Abrams, Nickelodeon, Webtoons, Magpie could all drop some stuff that we're maybe not fully expecting. So I'm just going into this one with the idea of we've always been, I think, a little bit had to keep our expectations in check. I do just think I have higher expectations here, and I don't think I'm out of line to have slightly higher expectations here, just because it is effectively going to be the last, I think, big Comic-Con panel where publishing is the only Avatar news expected. And I hope they, deliver with the last time they're going to be the full spotlight for Avatar. Whereas I think when we come into like SDCC next year, whether they do a big podcast panel that also features Avatar Studios, or they evolve the publishing panel to be about like everything Avatar or whatever, I would expect the panels next year to not just be a podcast panel and like 2 publishing panels basically type thing. I'd expect Avatar Studios animation information to be in there somewhere. Probably even a merchandising panel. I don't really even know. But more than what we're currently getting for sure. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. 2 new people added to the panel since the last time I did speculation. What are you expecting? Especially, I think, when it comes to Rachel Silverstein, what do you think she's here for in terms of, like, is it an announcement, or is it just, hey, you're at New York Comic Con, you worked on Avatar previously, get on this panel. You're not here for anything significant, but you worked on Avatar previously. I feel it has to be more than that, because it's 2024 and not like 2017 or something like that, when the panels really did just have a bunch of relatively random people on them. But let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.